Evening. Welcome and thank you for joining us live and for taking the time to watch the recording of our broadcast. My name is Bill Jones and I'm the state's attorney from Dorchester County. Tonight we have representatives from the law enforcement organizations that protect the citizens of Dorchester County. In a few minutes, I'll be introducing you to Lieutenant Adam Howard of the Maryland State Police, Captain John Stitchberry of the Dorchester County Sheriff's Office, Chief Bruce Jones of the Hurlock Police Department, and Captain Justin Todd from the Cambridge Police Department. First, let me thank WHCP for allowing us to use the broadcast studios to bring this program to you tonight. Mike and the team here at the station are always willing to help and serve the community in so many ways, and we're very thankful for the support they're giving us tonight. I'd also like to thank Bill Christopher from the Chamber of Commerce, who assists us in putting these programs on. Bill understands that a vital economy certainly is predicated upon a safe community, and we're very appreciative to Bill and the Chamber's efforts. Tonight's broadcast is the first in a three-part series. We'll be discussing the complex topic of crime and law enforcement. Especially in today's environment, the relationship between police and the citizens they are sworn to protect is critical to having a safe place to live, work, and play. And a safe place to live, work, and play is really what we are all looking for. Good jobs, good recreational opportunities, this being a good place to raise our families. All of those are things that all of us want. Now, our goal with this series is to help you sort of better understand how these various agencies work together in the county on your behalf, how they provide ways you can be engaged in making our community safer, and how you can help make this a great place to live as well. Now, if you have a question you would like one of our panelists to answer, please enter it in the chat feature, and we will get to as many questions as we can tonight. If we're unable to answer it because we don't have the time, or we run out of time, or perhaps we just don't have the answer, we'll certainly try to get that information back to you as soon as we can. So first, I would like to talk about the Maryland Criminal Intelligence Network. So the Maryland, sorry, I keep mumbling my words on that. The Maryland Criminal Intelligence Network is an initiative that's funded from the state. It's coordinated by the state, and it comes from the Governor's Office of Crime Prevention, Youth and Victim Services. That's one of the governor's coordinated offices that helps pursue things that are important to the governor and his initiatives that he would like to see go forward in making sure that Maryland is a safe place. Now, through the years, certain communities in Maryland have been identified as communities that have crime problems, meaning that not that we don't all have crime problems, but certain areas just have required additional assistance from the state. And through the years, Cambridge and Dorchester County have been identified as a place that will benefit from those resources from the state. In December 2017, Governor Hogan announced a series of initiatives to combat criminal gang enterprises and repeat violent offenders responsible for effectively terrorizing Maryland citizens and participating in violent crime throughout the state. As part of that, one of the initiatives was the creation and the implementation of the Maryland Criminal Intelligence Network. Now, that's a criminal justice strategy. It's coordinated at the local, state, and federal levels. And these initiatives are used to target gangs, drugs, firearms, human trafficking, and anything that affects the quality of life of Maryland citizens. We refer to the Maryland Criminal Intelligence Network as MCIN for short. And throughout the program, you may hear myself or the various guests use the term MCIN. And that's because we don't want everyone to keep jumbling their words like I did a few moments ago. MCIN is particularly focused on multiple jurisdictional crimes. You know, crime is a regional thing. Criminals know no boundaries. If someone commits a crime in Cambridge, that are just as likely to do it in East Newmarket or someplace else. We may have people come from Wycomico County to commit crimes here. And there's a certain regional aspect to this that you'll hear from tonight that involves Delaware and surrounding states. And so MCIN really is focused on, at least in part, targeting these multiple jurisdiction criminal enterprises, the sort of things that move across borders. And information sharing has been determined to be one of the best ways to combat those criminal enterprises. It's I would say it's a data-driven initiative. It is all about sharing information, obtaining information. And, you know, when law enforcement coordinates with each other, when these agencies talk to each other, when the sheriff talks to the Cambridge police chief, for example, you know, that type of intelligence sharing is vital. And historically, some departments have done more of that than others. but all of these departments now, and the governor has certainly identified that at the state level, one of the things that we have to do is make sure that these jurisdictions and these police departments don't simply look at the problems that they have. Instead, they need to talk to each other and share information, because that flow of information is vital in identifying those who would be responsible for the most violent and prevalent criminal activity in our communities. MCIN's goals are stated as being focused on identifying, disrupting, and dismantling criminal networks through collaboration and collective data sharing. The purpose of the program is to enhance coordination among public safety partners to ensure that tactics, resources, and intelligence are integrated for the purpose of targeting those networks and gangs. The integration includes enforcement, prevention, intervention, and reentry strategies. And when I say reentry strategies, we're talking about making sure that people who are coming out of prison, who are going back into the communities, are also given those tools and resources necessary to make sure that they live good, productive lives. You know, we talk in court oftentimes about, you know, our goal in the criminal justice system isn't to arrest people and put them in jail. It's to keep communities safe. We want everybody to have a good life, including those who've come before the courts, who have had to answer for their activities, who perhaps have served a period of incarceration, maybe some time on probation. And we try to make sure that they have the resources they need so they can be successful when they go forward. For the most part, but for, you know, certainly we have some violent criminals. Perhaps we can talk about whether redemption is possible for that. Rehabilitation is possible. That's a conversation we can certainly have. But for the most part, when people are charged with crimes that come before the court, they're going at some point, either immediately or sometime down the road, to re-enter society. And it's incumbent upon all of us to make sure that we give them the tools necessary so that they are not recidivists, repeat offenders, and instead we want them to go have good lives. Now, MCIN aligns state resources to provide for streamlined and coordinated operational planning, which includes 14 coalitions. And when I say 14 coalitions, what I'm saying is that there are 14 jurisdictions throughout the state that have been identified as MCIN sites that receive the support, the funding, the coordination from the governor's office to make sure that we can all do our part to keep our community safe. Those coalition partners, those MCIN sites, include Allegheny County, Annapolis, Anne Arundel County, Baltimore City, Baltimore County, Carroll County, Cecil County, Frederick, Harford, Montgomery, Prince George's, Washington County, Wycomico County, along with Dorchester County. And so as you can see, the state isn't just coming out and throwing money every place. They targeted these jurisdictions as places perhaps where they can make a real impact. And they are, in fact, making a real impact. Now, within Dorchester County, there are several entities or agencies that are part of this MCIN network, and that includes my office, the Dorchester County State's Attorney's Office. It includes the Dorchester Community Partnership for Children and Families, the Cambridge Police Department, the Hurlock Police Department, the Dorchester County Sheriff's Office, the Dorchester County Narcotics Task Force, and the Maryland State Police. Those are our key identified partners. Now, in addition to that, we don't just sort of live in a silo, as they say, and just only work with those certain organizations. What happens as well is we collaborate, we confer, we work with other agencies to make sure that we are doing everything we need to do. That could include parole and probation, juvenile services, the detention center, whoever we need to bring into these conversations to make sure that we are able to do everything that we want to do. Now, I'd like to introduce each of our 4 guest speakers for the evening, and I have them provide a little of their background information on the organizations they represent. And after that, we'll also have a conversation about not only their entity and their organization, but how their entity or organization fits into the MCIN program and supports us. So first, I would like to introduce Lieutenant Adam Howard of the Maryland State Police. I'm going to ask Lieutenant Howard to talk a little bit about his background and his entity, that being the Maryland State Police. Good evening, Lieutenant.
Good evening, Mr. State's Attorney. Thank you for having me. Good evening.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to be here. So what can you tell us just a little bit about you and the Maryland State Police, if you don't mind?
Of course. As stated, I'm a lieutenant with the Maryland State Police. I am currently assigned to the Criminal Enforcement Division on the Eastern region. That region composes of the 6 lower shore counties from Talbot all the way down to the Virginia line. There is a task force in each county, and I'm also responsible for each of the barracks criminal investigation sections. There's one at Easton Barrack, Princess Anne Barracks, Salisbury, and Berlin Barracks. My prior law enforcement experience, I was on the job for 17 years. I've been a patrol officer, a duty officer, assistant barrack commander in Cecil County, and also in Princess Anne in Somerset County. I was a support operations commander for the aviation division and also a underwater recovery team leader.
Well, you've done a lot there. As a matter of fact, I think that you and I had a conversation about how diverse the experience is for a lot of people in the Maryland State Police. And I think that there's a running joke going around that may have some truth in it, that when we met, I may have asked in a smart alecky way, where'd you come from last? The aviation division? And you said, yes, the aviation division.
Correct. Yes.
Well, you bring a breadth of experience with you, and certainly I think that benefits the Maryland State Police and all the citizens as well. What can you tell us about the Maryland State Police? I told you earlier, I'm a little bit of a history buff, and I think that a lot of people don't really understand. They see the state police as the trooper in the olive and green black car that pulls them over on the highway for speeding, but doesn't know much more beyond them. And certainly there is a traffic history there. But what can you tell us a little bit about, in terms of the state police, that maybe people don't know?
So the Maryland State Police, we were actually created in 1921 on January 10th, 1921, and we were created as the governor's police force. That was our purpose, to be the governor's police force and enforce the laws that the governor enacted. The benefit about being a state trooper and having a state police agency is we don't know jurisdictional boundaries like the county agencies and local municipalities do. Criminals, for example, criminals in Dorchester County don't stay in Dorchester County. They travel all over the state of Maryland and in various states, actually, not just Maryland. What the state police allows us to do is we can cross those jurisdictional boundaries. We can go into other areas. We can go into Baltimore City. We can go into Anne Arundel County and Worcester County and all over the state and follow these criminals to prosecute them for the crimes that they're committing.
Now, when you talk about that, there was some thought, I was thinking about this earlier, that you all are sort of a dual agency in the sense that you have a primary law enforcement mission. If somebody in Dorchester County calls 911, for example, that call may go to the sheriff, or that may go to the barrack and handle that way. But there's also sort of this support function as an overarching agency. Could you talk about that for a moment?
Certainly. So our agency, Maryland State Police, is divided up of 3 bureaus. We have a field operations bureau, which when you call 911 and you need a trooper to respond because there's an incident occurring, that's who you're going to get. Then we also have a support services bureau where aviation division, some of our support services fall underneath of. And then we have the criminal investigation and enforcement bureau, CED is what they call it. And that's where I fall in. These are all your specialized task forces. These task forces compose of members from allied agencies, from your local municipalities, from Cambridge PD to the Dorchester County Sheriff's Office to the Maryland State Police, and including some of our federal partners and even some of our state allies, Delaware State Police, Virginia State Police. They're part of these task forces. We have our narcotics task forces, our gun task forces, our warrant apprehensions unit. All these departments come together and collaboratively work out of the same building, out of the same office to help bring these criminals to justice and solve crimes. Because crimes, again, they don't, criminals don't care about jurisdictional boundaries. They'll commit a crime in Dorchester County, then they'll go in Wycomico County and commit a crime. That's where these task forces comprised of many agencies come together to solve these crimes.
Now, you mentioned the narcotics task force, and I believe you said that the ones in this region fall under your command. Is that correct?
That is correct. Everything from Talbot all the way to the Virginia line.
So in terms of like the Dorchester task force, can you talk a little bit about how that's comprised and at what level they are working and how that group ultimately supports the mission of the MCIN program that we have here?
Certainly. So our Dorchester County Task Force, our unit there, has members from the State's Attorney's Office, from the Sheriff's Office, from Cambridge Police Department, Hurlock Police Department, and also the Maryland State Police. Those members work in Dorchester County and they focus on Dorchester County crime. However, if they have a case that reaches into Delaware or that reaches into Wycomico, for example, they reach out to their partners in Delaware State Police that also have these combined units in these task forces. They reach out to their Wycomico task force, which also falls underneath me. So the information sharing, the communication between those task forces is seamless. It's simply a phone call. Most of the time it takes place without me even getting involved. The team members are so good about that. And we also have the ability to bring in our federal partners. So we bring in the DEA, the ATF, Joint Terrorism Task Force too. We can bring those partners in as they are also part of our state level task forces.
And when you talk about those federal partners, I think even Homeland Security has increased their presence here on the shore, and as well as their willingness to get involved in these investigations.
That is correct. They are simply a phone call away. We actually have one officer working out of our Dorchester County Task Force also.
Okay. Now, so the task force is known as the Dorchester County Narcotics Task Force. Is it limited to just narcotics work?
No. So as we know, narcotics work. A lot of our violent crime, a lot of our homicides are occurring around narcotics, and narcotics trafficking and drug trafficking. A lot of our human trafficking also involves narcotics trafficking. Our narcotics officers, even though that's what they are called, we recently had a task force on the lower shore that solved a murder for us. It was a task force case. However, our MSP homicide division got involved. There was a homicide out of Salisbury, and they were able to close that through the task force and through some of their investigative leads that they had. There were CIs.
Okay. And then throughout the state, how do you see the MSP, the Maryland State Police participation generally in terms of the MCIN program across the state? Have you only been involved in this one here? Do you have representatives attend the various meetings and things like that? What does that look like?
So at my level, I'm in charge of the 6 counties over here on the shore. Now I have a captain that's above me, and he's in charge of my counties, and also the captain's the lieutenant on the other side who's in charge of 6 counties also. Me and those lieutenants talk very regularly. We have meetings quarterly at the state police level, and we discuss all of these task force objectives. We discuss things that are going on. We have conferences. If we have a case that simply goes over in Allegheny County or over in Cumberland or up in Northeast, it's a phone call away. I just have to call the lieutenant up there. I can hook the partners up, and we can solve those crimes. For example, we had an incident recently in Dorchester County where there was a traffic stop, and it was a drug issue, a drug transaction that took place. We called our partners in Anne Arundel County, which is another task force, and they were actually able to set up surveillance on that house and actually do a search warrant on that house where the drugs came from.
And the last thing I want to talk about before I move on to our next guest, and certainly we'll come back and follow up with some things. Could you talk just for a moment about, in my mind, I've always had this idea of this sort of triangle here between us and Lower Delaware and Wicomico County and sort of the regional issues that we see there. Could you address that perhaps?
Certainly. So all of our drugs, a lot of our fentanyl, our heroin is coming from Baltimore. It's coming from Philly. Our problems are coming from these larger cities, and they're coming down through Delaware. They're going into Wicomico County. Wicomico County, Salisbury crime is spilling over into Dorchester County. It's spilling over into Somerset County. They're all closely related. It's all the same players. We can't look at it as we're going to arrest this person in Wicomico, or we're going to arrest this person in Dorchester County. We're looking at it as a totality and trying to bring down the whole drug trafficking organization. We call it a DFO, drug trafficking organization. And if we can take down that organization as a whole, all the gang members and all their entities, and seize all their assets, that's what we're trying to do. And that's why we're working with our partners, especially over in Delaware State Police too, to try to bring down these TFOs.
Great, thank you. I'm not sure that everybody necessarily understands, unless you spend a lot of time in this, just how regional this is. That some of the stuff comes from Delaware and Wicomico and the relationships between them. So I appreciate you taking time to explain that.
Of course.
Great, thank you, Lieutenant.
Thank you.
Now I'd like you to meet Captain John Stitchberry from the Dorchester County Sheriff's Office. Captain Stitchberry is somebody that I worked with for a time. People may not know. Before I went to law school, I spent 5 years as a sheriff's deputy, and before that, 3.5 years with the Cambridge Police. So I had a chance to get to know some of our guests tonight fairly well. And Captain, I think that we worked the road together for a time, didn't we?
Yes, we sure did.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you taking time to be here and talk to us tonight. So, what can you tell us about yourself and your agency in terms of background, if you don't mind?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. State's Attorney Jones. As he said, I'm John Stitchberry, Jr., Captain, and I hold the position of Chief Deputy at the Dorchester County Sheriff's Office. I've been in an active law enforcement for 35 years. I have held several positions, deputy first class. I was the first deputy school resource officer at North Dorchester High School, patrol sergeant, detective sergeant, lieutenant. And prior to coming to the Dorchester County Sheriff's Office, I started my career with the Hurlock Police Department as a patrolman. And prior to that, I was a correctional officer, dispatcher, and did some farming. I chose to work in law enforcement to protect and serve the communities and to help others. My desire to continue to help others by keeping the community safe and working with the citizens of our great community through community policing and awareness programs. My interest in law enforcement was greatly influenced by my family. My grandfather was a motorcycle cop with the Maryland State Police many years ago. My great-grandfather was a sheriff of Talbot County and the chief of police of Easton in the early 1920s. So there's some history in my family, but I've always wanted to help others. And I am also a member of the Hurlock Volunteer Fire Company, past president and chief. I'm here tonight representing the Dorchester County Sheriff's Office. We cover all of Dorchester County, which is just over 980 square miles. Our staff consists of 41 sworn law enforcement officers, 4 part-time civilian civil process, 4 full-time administrative staff, and 3 dog control officers. You know, we're here, we cooperate with and assist all our allied law enforcement agencies in the county, and we're also kind of like the county police. We also handle calls ourselves. The Sheriff's Office maintains and fosters a strong working relationship with all our partners, federal, state, and local law enforcement. We support other organizations that request our assistance in the county, who want to learn more about crime topics such as current drug trends or problems. The sheriff has continued to work with the Dorchester County Board of Education when our SRO program, and that to keep our kids and our staff safe in our schools. Before COVID, the Sheriff's Office participated in Coffee with a Cop at our senior centers. We'll hopefully get back to that soon as this COVID is over with. We also participate in other events, National Night Out in Secretary, Bike Patrol, Vienna concerts, and other patrols in other small communities in our county. The sheriff has been one that's always encouraged staff to be active, coaching sports and participating in other organizations within our county. We'd also like to let you know, obviously, if you have a true emergency, we want you to call 911. But if not, it's not a true emergency. You can call the 410-228-4141. You can also use our crime tip line, which is actually found on our Dorchester County website, the docosheriff.com. Those tips can also be made anonymously, and they help us to solve crimes and to prevent crimes.
Thank you, Captain. Now, obviously, nobody makes any of our organizations become an MCIN member, right? And so it took us for a while. For example, this sort of came in on the heels of the Safe Streets program, if you recall, and nobody can make the sheriff agree to be a part of this. Nobody can make me or the Cambridge Police or the Hurlock Police or anyone else. So why do you think it is that the sheriff sees value in becoming or did see value in becoming a member of this MCIN community and what it has to offer?
Well, one, it's a benefit to all our law enforcement agencies, and we are able now to communicate, I think, more effectively and to share information to help get the violent offenders off the streets and keep our community safe.
So as part of that, you are responsible for the rural policing for the most part. The Cambridge Police takes care of the issues in Cambridge, and Chief Jones and the Hurlock Police take care of the matters inside of Hurlock. And so, it's probably fair to say, and perhaps Captain Todd will agree with me, that Cambridge has a large share of our violent crime and issues like that. It's a more urban area than the rural. We have a concentrated group of citizens. And so, like much of America, where you see communities that are more concentrated, more urban, that's where we're going to see more issues. But as I understand it, just because you are sheriff's deputies that do things out in the county doesn't mean that you're not participating and supporting in the issues in the city. And as part of that, I would take you back to a few months ago, we had sort of these shootings back and forth, and I'm going to talk to Captain Todd more about that. But we had these shootings back and forth, and from my understanding is that the sheriff dedicated his personnel to spend a significant amount of time in the city. Can you talk about that?
Sure. Anytime our allied agencies call for our assistance, we will provide assistance to them in what we can with our manpower. And as you said, our deputies do travel all over the county, and the municipalities are in Dorchester County. So they do take action when they see criminal activity and in the municipalities as well.
Yeah, and it's probably important for people to understand that, when it comes to your budget requests and fundings and things like that, it's not like you're just handling the rural parts of the county. You are handling the whole county, including the city, and come in and on a Saturday night providing. Matter of fact, I was at a serious crime scene a number of months ago, and I think that you had 2 deputies that were dedicated to protecting that scene inside the city of Cambridge, while their officers were able to focus on other things. So, well, I just want to say that I really appreciate the work that you and your other deputies do, as well as the sheriff. Certainly, there's this notion that these are difficult times for law enforcement. And, when you talked about your background, I suspect that when somebody thanks you for your service, they have a lot to thank you for. The last thing I wanted to ask you about before we move on to our next guest is the primacy and your relationship with the state police, because I know that out in the county that both of you sort of work together as well. We talked about the collaboration with the city. How does that work with the state police as well?
Well, for many, many years, you can attest when you were there at the sheriff's office, they've had a detachment at the sheriff's office. Prior to that, when the sheriff's office was at the old jail on Court Lane, there was a detachment across the street. The state police patrols have always worked together greatly and backed up each other numerous times.
Yeah, I remember nights, not too often, but sometimes there would be one trooper and me, and we'd run calls all night together.
Yes.
So, well,
Yes.
we're grateful to the state police and the support they give us as well. Well, Captain, I really appreciate your time, and I will likely circle back with you at some point later in our program and perhaps ask some follow-up questions. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Now I'd like to have Chief Bruce Jones of the Hurlock Police Department on. Chief Jones has a long and storied career in law enforcement, and we're very grateful to have him here. We're grateful also to have him as the chief of the Hurlock Police Department. Hurlock is smaller than Cambridge, but Hurlock is a municipality nonetheless that fields its own police force and does so quite well. So Chief Jones, thank you and welcome.
Thanks, Bill, and thanks. Good evening to everyone out there.
What can you tell us about you and your department, if you don't mind taking a moment?
Not at all. My name is Bruce Jones. I'm currently the chief of the town of Hurlock Police Department. I began my career in 1980 with the Cambridge Police Department. I worked patrol division, detective division, narcotics enforcement team. I retired after 35 years of service at the rank of deputy chief. That equals 41 years in law enforcement. The Hurlock Police Department has a sworn allotment of 10 officers. I'm thankful that currently we are full staffed. In Hurlock, we are very proud of our small town atmosphere. Our community has a deep-rooted railroad and agricultural heritage. The population of Hurlock is about 2,100 citizens. However, during our typical workday, we have a unique situation where our population nearly doubles when we have the influx of workers to our poultry and food processing facilities. And we're unique in that we're located geographically at a major crossroads between Seaford, Fettlesburg, and Cambridge.
That's really interesting. And, it's funny, people think of a place like Ocean City where a population swells on a weekend, but they wouldn't think of a place like Hurlock where a population swells to like double its size during the workday. And I don't think that most people would know that. Certainly I didn't know it until you told me that.
Yeah, it's kind of unique to our situation.
Yeah. And so you talked about the crossroads, and I'd like to, circle back on that for a moment because, you've got East Newmarket, Secretary of Cambridge beneath you. You've got Wacomico in Delaware. You've got Bridgeville, not that far away, Federalsburg, Preston, and all that. So what sort of activities do you see that are in Hurlock related to the fact that you are sort of this crossroads for a major part of the Eastern Shore?
Well, I think you touched on it earlier that, our society is a very transit society. I think not only do our perpetrators and clients recognize the jurisdictional boundary, I think they use them at times to avoid detection and apprehension. So partnering with all of our partners just makes us more effective.
Certainly there's this notion that sometimes people are looking to get off of Route 50 and Route 13 and 301 and maybe avoid the major highways as best they can. And what that does is bring them into our, sort of their trafficking activities through our communities. In terms of violent crime in MCIN, what types of violent crime and what's the recent history been in Hurlock in terms of your crimes of violence?
Bill, our small town atmosphere doesn't make us immune from any criminal activity. Well, violent crime has decreased over the last several years, including homicides, robberies, and serious assaults. In March of this year, we responded to 2 incidents where shots were fired into residents in town of Hurlock. This is very concerning to us, and we have taken a great deal of time in investigating and trying to find the culprits in this.
So how does, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead, finish, please.
Overall, just to get breakdown of some of our statistics, like in 2020, we had 8 reported motor vehicle thefts. Now, about half of those involved ATVs and dirt bikes, but they're still classified as motor vehicles nonetheless. In each of these incidents of vehicles being stolen, the keys were left in the vehicle. These aren't professional car thieves that are stealing this. They're just crimes of opportunity.
Well, how prevalent is that? Because, I hear about that frequently, and a lot of times the smaller town, Easton sometimes will put out a press release, or other jurisdictions perhaps, where they say, please lock up your valuables. Please, lock up your car. Don't leave things out in the open. Just how prevalent is that a problem where people just leave things out there for the taking?
It's very prevalent. It's very prevalent. Our crime cycles will go in cycles. A big situation we have from time to time is where groups of people, 1 or 2, 3, will just go about town and just start pulling on car doors looking for unlocked vehicles. They ransack the vehicle, take loose change, personal items. And that's why we try to preach on Facebook and in any talks we give to just remove your valuables from your vehicle and lock up your vehicles and any valuables.
Now, when I was talking to Captain Stitchberry about the voluntary nature of this MCIN program, certainly you don't have to participate in it, but I trust that you see some value in the governor's office, coordinating this type of effort locally. So, why is it that you up in, people think the small town of Hurlock, why is it that you think that Hurlock's participation is worthwhile to the citizens of Hurlock?
Bill, I think at the end of the day, we all have a common goal of protecting our citizens and making our communities safer. There's no doubt in my mind that any partnerships that we form, if we could share intelligence, share resources, share training, as a team, we are more effective at doing our jobs.
So is it fair to say that you're not just focused on the borders or the town limits of Hurlock? Because in a perfect world, if that's all you had to focus on would be inside of Hurlock, you wouldn't really care about what's going on outside of Hurlock. But I trust that if I were to ask you, would say that what goes on outside of Hurlock impacts what goes on inside Hurlock also.
Absolutely. When we share these intelligence information with our partners, we recognize right away that we share common clients.
Yeah, and one of the things that I hear from time to time, and I'll ask Captain Todd about that, is that we almost get sometimes these rivalries or these retaliatory acts. We've got Hurlock guys and Cambridge guys who, sometimes the Hurlock guys might come down here and do some things. The Cambridge guys go up there and do some things, and just sort of this, we call it gang activity because we do have gang activity. It's not as tightly organized as it might be in Los Angeles, perhaps, but we still have these organizations of people who commit crimes, and they sort of bounce back and forth. And I guess that, without the sharing of information, you would certainly be handicapped not knowing what's going on in Cambridge.
Absolutely. We know we share clientele. A lot of times we find that we're focused on the same persons of interest, and any intelligence we could share between agencies, just between investigators, even on case-by-case basis, behooves everybody.
Right. And we talked about the coordination with the captain earlier. I think it's also safe to say that the sheriff and the state police are also there for you when you need that time in Hurlock also.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We couldn't survive without our partnership with both of them.
Right. Well,
Anytime I need anything, they're just a phone call away.
and they probably say that they wouldn't want to have to police all of Hurlock themselves. They're probably grateful that you're there to do that primarily, and they can just sort of jump in and help out when you need that.
Absolutely. I think our agency is a great resource, a stop off late at night when everything's closed up north.
Right, right. Well, we're certainly grateful for you and your department. So I thank you for your time tonight. I thank you for your efforts. And after our next guest, we'll probably circle back on our Q&A and maybe ask some follow-up questions, Bruce. So I really appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. So now our final guest is Captain Justin Todd. Captain Todd is from the Cambridge Police Department. Captain Todd, there he is on the screen. Captain, welcome. Good evening.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Well, we're very fortunate to have you. So I appreciate you taking the time. So start off, what can you tell us about you and your department, just sort of in way of background before we talk about the MCIN specifics?
Sure. Well, I'm beginning my 21st career with the Cambridge Police Department. In 2006, I was promoted to corporal in patrol. In 2008, I began running a squad as a sergeant. Was able to move up into the narcotics as a detective sergeant at the end of 2010, beginning in 2011. At that time, I was later promoted to head of the Criminal Investigation Division. In 2014, I was able to attend and graduate from the National FBI Academy, where when I returned in 2015, I was promoted to the lieutenant in charge of the Criminal Investigation Division. I currently sit at the rank of captain today, in charge of operations of the department, also in charge of internal affairs and public information officer at the PD. Since becoming a police officer in 2001, why I became a police officer. It's been a dream of mine since I was a child. Always wanted to do it. It always interested me. And I devoted the last 21 years. I grew up in Dorchester County, born and raised, went to school in Cambridge. And the last 21 years, I tried my best to dedicate those years to learning the city, learning the community and Dorchester County, to make the city a better place. As everyone knows, policing has changed today. And one of our main goals at the police department is the community outreach. I feel that it's important as a police agency today to be able to form those relationships with communities and educate the communities on our goals and what we're looking to obtain and to understand our daily functions as a police department. At full strength, to tell you a little bit about the Cambridge Police Department, we're at 46 officers. Right now, we are currently working with a staff shortage of 10 officers. And anybody can imagine being down 10 officers is quite a challenge when it comes to keeping all the divisions running, functional, spreading out the manpower to make sure all the needs are met throughout the city. For example, there are 12,000, little over 12,000, maybe more people that reside in the city of Cambridge today. So with 36 officers working the streets, patrol officers, CID, that makes up all of our divisions, community policing, it can become a challenge. Asked about one of our main issues throughout the city is, of course, we're always worried about crime, violent crime, and the opioid problem that has affected the nation. And certainly we've seen our share of that here in Cambridge. Luckily, working with other law enforcement agencies, being able to partner throughout the county, the state, has certainly helped us in so many ways, being able to combat the war on this pandemic and be able to bring some of the people responsible to justice. Our community policing division, which at the CPD, which works with different organizations throughout the community. Of course, the COVID pandemic has definitely caused many issues with that and hiccups as far as our annual programs that we hold. For example, we have things like Police Athletic League, DARE. They're designed for younger elementary age students in schools to get to know the police officers, to get to know our jobs and what we're about, that we're not just a person with a badge and a gun and a uniform. We're human beings that live, work, and have other children in the community. And we look forward to being able to get back to doing that, to get this pandemic over with and move on with some of the programs that we find to be successful here at the Cambridge Police Department.
Well, thank you. You've provided a lot of information there. One of the things I wanted to talk about, what we get from this program are various things. They've helped fund an attorney in my office, for example, so that we could focus on certain prosecutions. They help fund equipment. They help fund police overtime. In terms of I have this theory, and tell me what you think, but I have this theory that a large portion of our issues can be related down to a small number of people, meaning that whatever we have going on in Cambridge, that it's a small group of people generally responsible for the large sort of collection of problems that we have. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. Throughout my career, I've seen it so many times. You take away some of those small issues and problems within each community, it's amazing what you can do to their crime rate, and so we see it often. And the part of being able to, or we have, like Chief Jones had mentioned earlier, being able to have the ability to communicate with, say, Hurlock PD or other agencies, the sheriff's office, that people that visit Cambridge but live in the county. You see that a lot as well.
So my view of that is that through the MCIN program and the targeted prosecution, because one of the things we don't want to do, we look at these cases and we say, all right, not everybody who's convicted of second-degree assault, for example, needs the same sentence. There are various types of assault. You can beat someone pretty badly, and that may be a second-degree assault, or just effectively just sort of touch someone, and that's a secondary assault. But the other thing that factors into how we treat these things is someone's background. Is this the first time we've ever heard of this person? Is this the first time that they've come into the criminal justice system? Or is this a person who they have 30 contacts with the Cambridge Police Department, and it's just one thing after another? And so I think it's fair to say, and correct me if I'm wrong, that one of the things we try to do is we target on that person, or focus on that person who had those 30 contacts when they come in again, and say, you know what, this person is a continued problem and perhaps needs to be dealt with more severely than someone who really we're just seeing for the first time and made that first mistake along the way. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that is one of the great things of working with your office that we've been able to, in the criminal investigations division, has been able to work with. There are people out there that make mistakes, that go to court, and they're able to be rehabilitated. They learn from their mistakes, and there are others out there that don't, and they continue to commit these crimes, and some of them, they elevate. They get more and more serious, as I know you and I have talked about many times before. And when that happens, then that's when we have to go to other measures, and maybe something more serious charges and crimes and convictions need to take place.
Right. And so certainly the MCIN program, I think, at least in my view, has been very effective in helping us on the local level do that sort of targeted prosecution, identifying, those people who cause the most problems for us. One of the other pieces of that, however, is overtime funding. We get some overtime funding from the state. And we changed it up. It all sort of, I don't want to say it runs through my office now, but we coordinate that spending to make sure that it's spent on the types of things that we want it spent on. And one of those things are these targeted initiatives, the enforcement activities. Can you talk for a moment about what those activities are, what they look for, what your officers are trying to do, and how they work with the other entities, the sheriff, the state police, and Hurlock?
Yeah, and going back, ever since we've been a part of this, MCIN operations, so many operations, so many meetings, we were able to gather so much more intel and get so much more manpower out there to assist in our city. And, we work together, we come up with operation plans to target offenders that are high on the criminal list that we're trying to apprehend and get off the streets to make them safer. And going through meetings several years ago when all this first started, that was huge to be able to put it on paper, put it out, communicate with each agency, and be able to go out there and work together with the overtime funding that MCIN's been able to provide us to be able to more effectively do our jobs.
And one of the other things we've been able to spend some money on is some equipment. We've been able to buy some equipment. We've come out of a recession not that long ago. COVID certainly did not help things in terms of funds that are available. And so what sort of things has your agency been able to do as we get together as these MCIN partners and talk about maybe spending some money?
Yeah, as we know, technology today is a major contributor to the law enforcement world. Without it, we certainly would be at a loss. Thankfully, things such as cameras within the city, things that help our detectives do their job much more effectively has come through MCIN. And we're very thankful to be able to have that, because with that, it makes the community safer. It makes the citizens safer, because we're able to solve some of these crimes a lot faster than we would if we did not have that equipment.
Okay, great. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to come in tonight and the efforts of you and your officers, particularly if you're short-staffed. I did the math real quick in my head. That would be like 25% down in terms of your sworn staff.
Yes,
I'm sure that presents real challenges. So we're going to move into sort of this Q&A section now, but just for what sort of issues do you see in terms of police recruiting since you are down? What types of struggles or challenges do you see in law enforcement currently in terms of trying to get people to come in to be police officers?
Well, certainly in today's climate, the pay for one, and I can't speak for other agencies, but I can speak for the Cambridge Police Department. That's definitely an issue, been an issue. But also what's going on with legislature now is definitely going to put an effect on how many applicants we can get, who wants to be the police today, and who we can find that are qualified enough to want to do the job and make a difference within the communities we serve.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm not looking to get, really political here, because no good usually comes from that. But the environment is challenging for law enforcement, right? We saw the Derek Chauvin trial and conviction yesterday. And, I think that I heard somebody on the radio talking last night about how good cops were or should have been pleased with that outcome or a conviction of some sorts, because it's those very few cops. It's almost like what we just talked about with the bad guys in our streets, right? That most of the cops are out there doing a good job, and they're good people, and they're dedicated to fair constitutional, I call it constitutional policing, pursuant to the confines of the Constitution. But we don't hear about the large numbers of good cops doing it right every day. We hear about the ones that do it wrong because there are cell phone cameras and everything else, and we see it much more now. And so the climate is such that, we probably did not have enough accountability, and people like that guy got away with some things probably shouldn't have. And so now there's this effort to swing it back the other way. And of course, I've given a lot of theories tonight. Ideally, we would like to get it in the middle to where our community can be safe because police officers are allowed to do their jobs, but at the same time, making sure that they do so constitutionally, that we make sure that people aren't being stopped because of their color or their race or their gender or anything else about them. But as we move everything to the other way, eventually the pendulum swings and it'll swing back to the middle. Hopefully we'll get it right. But there are a lot of concerns currently about that. And, it certainly can be a challenge. So in terms of that, let me ask Chief Jones for a moment. What have you been doing that made you successful in keeping your staff of 10 staffed at 10?
I think that the mayor and commissioners have been very generous with the benefits. We try to create an atmosphere that you're not just a member of a police department, you're a member of a team, a member of a family, and that if we want you there as a career, we don't want to be a stepping stone to go to a bigger department. And with all this legislation coming out, I got to talk to the officers. I say, don't have a knee-jerk reaction. Just keep doing what you do. Do the right thing for the right reason and under the letter of the law, and we'll see how it goes.
Well, at the moment, it must be working for you because you're fully staffed. So I'm glad that all those things are working. Captain Stitchberry, I'd like to ask you, because we're on these issues of difficult times and things like that, how do you instill in your deputies the reminder, if you will, that they have to treat people fairly and evenly and equally and make sure that the minorities on the streets believe that they're going to be treated the same as anybody else? How do you instill that culture or maintain a culture, if that's what's there now, to maintain that discipline so that your deputies are treating everybody fairly?
Well, I think State's Attorney Jones, everybody at the sheriff's office, a majority here live here on the shore. A majority of them were raised here in Dorchester County, and we know a lot of the citizens. But we are like Hurlock PD, even though we're only down by one. We're kind of like a family-oriented staff, and we work with all of our officers to continue to work with our communities and be out in the community. And I think that helps them relate with the citizens so that we're not out there just being a job policing and doing the bad things that some of the bad police do in our country.
Right. So you talked about, what citizens don't know, and it's difficult for the average person to understand because if they've not been in some of these high risk, high stress situations, it's tough to really fully appreciate that. And the point there is that, we like we're having this program, we just want to make sure that people understand what it is that you and your officers or deputies or troopers are doing. So Lieutenant Howard, let me ask you this. What do you think are the one or two most important things that the average citizen should know about law enforcement that maybe they don't know?
The main thing is that we're human. Law enforcement officers we're human. Humans make mistakes. We have to learn from those mistakes and make sure we try not to repeat them. Another thing I'd like people to understand, we live in these communities. I was born here on the shore. I'm a shore boy. As a lot of the partners here on this Zoom conference right now. We are from here. We go to restaurants here. We go grocery shopping here. Our kids, my kids go to school here, public education. We want these communities to be safe. We want to be able to go out on the streets, and we want to be able to go to events and not have to fear about shootings or criminal activities. And the opioid epidemic, scares me to death with my son. And I want this to be over and come to some sort of resolution. So we have to be a partner in this. It's not law enforcement against the community. We're all a community. It seems to me, especially from the law enforcement perspective, that a lot of community members don't support law enforcement. I'd just like the community members to know that a vast majority of us law enforcement professionals want this community, our communities, to be safe. We're here to do the right thing, and sometimes we need to be guided, and sometimes policies change, and we have to adjust and adapt, and we will. We have policies and procedures in place for that. So,
does training factor into that? We talk about the mistakes and trying to reduce the mistakes that are made. How does training factor into that?
Yeah. So if you just look at policing over the past 2 or 3 decades, and I'm not even going back into the 70s, but just the 2 or 3 decades, training has evolved immensely. I've been involved in law enforcement 17 years. 17 years ago, we didn't have tasers. You had pepper spray. You carried a PR-24 baton, and now you carry a collapsible baton. You carry tasers. You have video cameras. I remember in 2007-8, I was one of the first patrol cars in the Maryland State Police to have a video camera installed. Now we're looking at body cameras. So technology is constantly changing. The way that we adapt our policies, the way that we treat people, the laws are constantly changing. So we constantly have to evolve and train our officers differently. And of course, as we learn more about human psychology and human behavior, we're going to be able to better understand how to de-escalate situations and offer better training to our officers.
Captain Todd, there was a question someone asked once. Since you've had so many officers leave, do you do like exit interviews or something like that to try to find out what it is that's sort of pushing them out the door?
Yes, we have. We've got an exit, and we just changed our exit interview process now, where we put it on paper, and we were able to keep not only interview them, but let them put it on paper so it can go stay in their file and move on so we can discuss it with staff and citywide about the reasons they left. In the last several that have left us, it goes back to the reasons of pay.
Okay. And you have a chance to convey that information to the mayor and the council so they understand why you're hemorrhaging these officers.
Yeah, so one of the captains and chief will do the exit interviews. It'll go to the chief, and then it passes on to the council and the mayor from there. So we're all on the same page of what we can do to better the department and help the community that we serve.
Okay. And in 20 seconds or less, Captain, while I have you, what's the emotional toll that this work takes on an officer and that they take home with them at night?
It takes an emotional toll. You think about, most of the people that get into law enforcement, it's for their career. They've wanted to be there. There's a reason why they get in it. They get in it to help people. They want to make a difference in their community. And when they see the things that are on the TV, most everybody in law enforcement knows that 99% of us are good cops. We want to make a difference. It's the 1% out there that makes us look and feel that we're not able to do the jobs we know we can do and help communities stay safe. And that's what I want to get across to our county and city. We're here to help you.
So great. I really appreciate you saying that. So in terms of a wrap up for each of you, I'll go through one by one. I'll ask Lieutenant Howard first. In 20 or 30 seconds, what's the one thing you would want people to take away from this program in terms of what they can do to make their community safer?
Involve us. We are part of your community. Call us. If you see crime, give us a call, give us a tip, participate in investigations. There's nothing worse, and we work very closely with our homicide unit, and their biggest complaint is you go to a homicide and you start interviewing witnesses that observed it and nobody knows anything. Nobody saw anything and nobody knows anything. Please participate. This is your community. We want to help make it better, but we need your help.
Okay, great. Thank you. Captain Stitchberry, what are your thoughts on that topic?
Lieutenant Howard hit a lot of it, but if the citizens will just definitely come out and help us with information in solving crimes that they know about, and be a participant. This is their community, and we live here too. As Captain Todd said, we're all living here and our families here, and we want everybody to be safe.
All right, thank you. Chief Jones.
I would echo the same sentiments. I would add, lock up your valuables. Do an ounce of prevention. If you see something, say something.
Yeah, it all starts with some level of personal responsibility, I suppose. Captain Todd, what do you think? What's one thing you want people to take away from this program that they can do to perhaps help make their community safer?
Yeah, I will, say the same thing. If you see something, say something. If we need the community to help us so we can help them. We can't be everywhere all the time, but get involved with your community. Get involved with the children. Do things to help out. And so many great people do in this community, but we need more of it.
And one of the common themes here with all of this, as I wrap this up, is that Lieutenant Howard said it best. You guys are trying to combat and reduce and prevent, when possible, violent crime. That's really what this is about. And it's like that because we want our communities to be safe. We want this to be a safe place to work and play and everything else. And hopefully, our viewers will understand that the vast majority of our officers are good people trying to do good work. And they carry this home with them every night. And they try not to, I'm sure, but it's difficult, stressful work. And as a community of law enforcement professionals, we will continue to work to try to make sure that our community is safe and that they receive and are benefiting good, fair, equal, constitutional policing, as I call it. And I really appreciate the efforts of all of you with that. So with that, I'd like to thank our panel, not only for your time tonight, but for all you do on behalf of our community. A quick reminder goes out to our audience now as we wrap up that our next broadcast will be on May 5th at 6 p.m. And there we're going to focus on juvenile crime. One of our last MCIN meetings, we realized that juvenile crime is a significant portion of people's exposure to the criminal justice system. So we're going to spend the whole night on that, or 1 hour. You can follow the event on the Dorchester Chamber Facebook page or their website, and the links will be posted about 1 week out from the event. If you have any questions that we didn't answer tonight or topics you want us to discuss, please email us at dorchestermcin@gmail.com. I'd like to thank Bill Christopher and the Chamber again. I'd like to thank Governor Hogan and his staff for supporting us locally in our efforts to combat violent crime. We're quite grateful. And I'd like to thank you, the viewers, for joining us, and I hope you have a pleasant evening. Thank you.